Okay, everybody, we're gonna, it's time having arrived, we're gonna start open the meeting of this would be the July 25th, 2023 meeting of the Dunn County Planning Resource and Development Committee. All members of the committee are present. Approval of the minutes from July 11th.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Moorhead, anyone second? Supervisor Burek seconds. Any additions or corrections? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Minutes are approved. I don't think we have any general public comments today. So then we'll move right to the public hearing. So today we have a public hearing on proposed amendments to chapter 13 of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. Just a little bit of housekeeping first. This will be the only opportunity for the public to respond to issue public comments on regard to this matter. We will begin with a confirmation of the publication of the date, and then ask staff to provide a overview of the request to the ordinance, and then any public comment that there is, and then any questions or comments from the committee. If people, I think we have 2 people signed up for public comment. So when the time comes, I'll have you come up and I'll need to swear you in real briefly, and then we'll share your thoughts. So with that, I guess, Ann, can you lead us through the confirmation of the notice and the review of the staff report?
Would you like me to read the notice or just summarize it?
Just summarize it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the notice was published on July 5th and July 12th, 2023 in the Dunn County News. It was also published on July 12th in, I think, the Colfax Messenger and their affiliate newspaper. And this is regarding the proposed ordinance amendments to chapter 13 for today's hearing.
Thank you. And if you want to give us a summary of their staff review.
I had this open a second ago, I swear. All right. So earlier this year, the PR&D committee asked Dunn County's planning staff to lead a review process to consider revisions to the language of chapter 13 comprehensive zoning ordinance, specifically a text amendment that was codified in January 2017 that permitted dwellings in general commercial and limited commercial zoning districts. The primary concern at that time was that housing developers could potentially contradict a town's plan for future commercial development in that area. In your packet, there is a draft for the changes in the language. Could you scroll to that? There we go. So I can read this directly or I can summarize it, Tom.
Summarize is fine.
Okay. The first change would be to repeal language in the first paragraph of section 13.2.9.01, which reads non-owner occupied single family and or multifamily dwellings shall be included in the 3,000 square foot restriction. Change number 2 would be to repeal language in section 13.2.9.03. Specifically non-owner occupied dwelling, including single and multifamily dwellings. Section 13.2.9.04 regarding permitted accessory uses would repeal single and multifamily dwelling and would be recreated to read as a single family residence only as an accessory to a principal use. The fourth change would be to repeal language stating single and multifamily dwelling adjacent to the principal use as a permitted accessory structure. And that would be replaced to read a single family residence located on the same parcel as the principal use, provided that the use of the residence is an accessory use rather than the primary use. In their review, staff found that this aligns with the comprehensive plans of both the town and the county. And that brings us to today.
Thank you. Any specific questions of Ann from the committee? Okay. Then as far as public testimony, we have two people who signed up. First would be Monica Herman. Yeah, could you come up to the podium and turn the mic on? And then if you just name and address.
Is it on?
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. Monica Herman, 1021 17th Avenue East, Menominee.
If you could raise your hand, Ann. You swear your testimony today will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I swear.
Okay.
I'm speaking for HUD, the Housing Action Team in Dunn County, and in support of the ordinance change, and for the reason that a recent housing study has shown us that we do need housing of all sorts, especially affordable housing in the county, and that change can motivate communities to revisit their comprehensive plans and be more deliberate in calling out developments and growth in communities to make it sustainable, to make it also cost effective for communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Kent Jackson.
Yeah.
Right.
Name and address.
Kent Jackson, N6281, 390th Street, Menominee.
Thank you. Swear you in. Do you swear your testimony today will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I just came here, we had discovered basically what had happened with that when we had a development being proposed in the town of Menominee. And in a commercial district, we actually ended up changing the district to an R2 because of the development that was going to happen. But in the process of going through that rezone, we discovered that the developer could have, and fortunately did not do, any kind of rental type duplexes in that area. And that was our concern with what was written in the commercial, limited commercial and general commercial zoning ordinance at the time. And so we were looking at that area as being a residential area. And fortunately for us, the developer at that time was interested in that. However, there was talk that it could potentially have been a duplex situation. And our goal in that area was to have, because we had commercial at one time, but it was close to the city and it was in our comprehensive plan as a possibility of an area that would be residential and owner occupied type residences and not rental type residences. So that's the reason why we were concerned, and we brought that up to actually Mike Kinnear. So I just wanted to kind of say, so the town of Menominee is, at least from our representation, is would like to see the changes happen to, and the amendments happen to the ordinance. That's all I had.
Thank you very much.
All
Very
right, thank you.
good explanation of the background. Does the committee have any other comments or questions they would like to raise at this point in time? Then I will, without objection, I'll close the public hearing and suggest that if it's again without objection from the committee, that we move the see, where is it? Consideration of the ordinance, which is not on here. I don't see it, but what? Well, I'll ask that we move to consider adoption of the ordinance at this point in time. If someone would care to make a motion to that effect. Sorry, Bjork, is there a second? Supervisor Kinnear seconds. Any further discussion? Yep.
Can we do that since it's not on the agenda? I don't want to be a pain, but
Well, so here's the dilemma we're in. I didn't notice this. I'm sorry. Yeah. And it's an oversight and not unexpected oversight that has happened occasionally. So it seems like we'd have two choices. One would be to I mean, it's the hope was to take this up at the county board meeting tomorrow night, or what next? Yeah, tomorrow night, which means we have to pass it today. So we have under number 9, we have consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinances of the county board fund planning, resource and development committee. My suggestion to the committee would be we consider that to be the required to meet the requirement for notification on the agenda of this, and take a vote on it. And if corporate counsel feels like that's inappropriate, then we can adjust that later on. So then we move to number 9, and if we need to, we can go back to number 9 later on for other issues. But for this issue, we'll consider approval of the proposed ordinance. And we have a motion and a second, I think, right? So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Good.
Is that the first reading tomorrow night of that chapter 13?
Yeah, you don't have a well, yeah, it would be a first reading, yeah.
Be the first reading, so there's still one more reading then.
Yeah,
Okay,
of course, if the motion is not valid, then we'll have to go back to the first reading all over again. Okay, that's where we're at then. The motion has been, all in favor of the motion? Aye. We took a vote, I'm sorry. Motion carries. Thank you for everyone's consideration. Staff reports, 6A, ENS annual report presentation for the county board.
I'm gonna start this.
Okay.
So Ann, Tom, and myself, obviously we provided our written report in a previous meeting, but this is going to be our presentation we provide to full county board tomorrow night. So we just wanted to take an opportunity to run through it with you. Hopefully cover any areas that we might want to add to it before tomorrow night, but it's also good practice for us. So here we go. So again, welcome. My name is Chase Cummings. I'm the county conservationist, the Land and Water Conservation Department. I'm serving as a formal yet informal facilitator for our 3 management team approach to the Environmental Services Department. I'm just going to give an introduction here to the annual report, and then I'll have Ann and Tom will represent their individual divisions as well. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so we are a self-directed management team. So we don't necessarily have a department head within our our overall environmental services department. The county surveyor, planning and land use coordinator, and county conservationist, myself, serve in that role. Collectively, we're responsible for the planning, organizing, directing, and performing all work for the environmental services department. Next slide, please, Tom. So this is a general, I guess, a grid of our overall department, each division, a number of positions we have within each one. There's 8 positions within the Land and Water Conservation Department, 5 within Planning and Land Use, and 3 within the Survey. Next slide. Refresher on the committee. So this Planning, Resource and Development Committee, also serving as a Land Conservation Committee for specific land conservation related matters that pertain to state, particularly state grants. Yeah.
Can you go back one slide? Why does it say Jim Anderson and Monica Barrier?
So this is a 2022 annual report. So the first
Got
few
it.
months in 2022 was previous. Yep. All right, next slide. All right, so Land and Water Conservation Division. Next slide, Tom. I'm going to speak specifically about my division that I oversee. So these are the staff within our division, and as similar to Supervisor Anderson and Supervisor Barrier, we had a change in staff with Steve Olson and Rick Ingley towards the end of 2022. We have, there's 8 of us total: Janelle Newcomb, Bob Kaner, Amanda Hanson, Heather Wood, Rick Ingley currently, Tina Barone, and Travis Dreyer. And for today's purposes of this particular committee meeting, Travis Dreyer is with us today for a different agenda item. Next slide, Tom. This is a long list, but not a comprehensive list of the different programs that we get involved with the Land and Water Conservation Department. Our mission is to sustainably use, enhance, and preserve the natural resources of Dunn County, and we do that through various programs. I'm not going to speak specifically to each one of these tonight. We've been asked to highlight one particular program, which I'll focus on right now. Next slide, Tom. I want to touch base on our farmer-led watershed groups. This is a program that's been going on since 2013, specifically with the Hay River Farmer-led Watershed Group in the northwestern part of the county. We have 2 groups within the county right now, the Hay River Farmer-led Watershed Council and the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers. This is a statewide program that's been receiving increased funding over the last few years, but it's intended to provide an opportunity for farmers to try to lead by example, try new things, find the security in trying new conservation practices, management techniques that can benefit surface water and ultimately groundwater as well. Currently, we have 2 grants, as I mentioned before, with 2 different groups. We have $20,000 for the Hay River Farmer-led Watershed Council and $24,400 for the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers. It's hard to see on the map, but you can see there's 2 groups there within Dunn County. The Red Cedar Conservation Farmers is on the eastern side by basically Grant Township, Sand Creek, that area. Next slide, Tom. So Hay River Farmer-led Council started in 2013. It was one of the original farmer-led watershed councils in the state. It was part of the original pilot program to decide whether this was a statewide effort that would be supported. To date, we have approximately $117,000 has come into the county through that program for that particular group. And there's also a shared, because of their part of the original 4 farmer-led watershed councils, a shared grant between 3 other watersheds within the western part of the county or western part of the state from McKnight Foundation. And that original grant total was $500,000, which is shared by those 4 farmer-leds. Primary goals are no-till, cover crops, grass waterways, soil sampling. And there's currently 15 active members that are participating in the current program. And that kind of ebbs and flows with interest and outreach. Nutrient load reductions for farmer-led watershed councils is a primary goal, looking at the Red Cedar watershed. The other farmer-led councils are Red Cedar Conservation Farmers on the right-hand side of the screen. Started in 2019 and to date have generated some revenue within the county of $168,000. There's a current grant right now, as I mentioned before, was $24,400 for the state farmer-led watershed council grant. but they also applied for a nitrogen optimization pilot program grant to just shy of $150,000. They have similar goals within the program: no-till, cover crops, grass to waterways, soil sampling, and water, including water sampling, both surface and groundwater. There's approximately 30 active members in that group right now. And again, the primary goal for these farm-led watersheds is nutrient reductions within the watershed. Right now, I believe we'll get to that in a different slide. Sorry. Next slide, Tom. Just a quick highlight on the Hay River Farm-led Council. Some of their goals are highlighted there in the text, and you can see the watershed boundaries in the northwestern part of the county. They do extend into surrounding counties, so from time to time we may have producers within those other counties participating through this particular grant program, but the bulk of them are within Dunn County producers as well. Next slide, Tom. Just a quick highlight. You can follow a lot of farmer-led watershed activities on social media through the Farmer-led Watershed Councils of St. Croix and Red Cedar Rivers Facebook page. And there's a number of events and things that are hosted through that, as well as we're hoping to include more reporting on those groups in the future to help with outreach and education. Next slide, Tom. This would be the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers Farmer-led group on the eastern side of Dunn County. You can see the primary sub-watersheds that involves. It also covers some area within Chippewa County. So we do have participants through this program that are Chippewa County residents. But when we think about the Farmer-led Watershed Councils, it is a watershed management technique. So watershed boundaries don't necessarily always follow political boundaries. Next slide, Tom. Just a little bit more on the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers, and some of their goals are written up there. Both groups provide a number of opportunities, specifically in the wintertime with some winter meetings, and then focusing on in-field demonstrations during the growing season. We had a recent opportunity with Governor Evers visiting a farm, the Deach Farm in Grant Township, and looking at the Farmer-led Watershed Program and its impacts to our county and the state. Next slide, Tom. Red Cedar Conservation Farmers accomplishments, just looking at some of the accomplishments they've had since they've formed in 2019. These are very similar to and consistent with Hay River Farmer-led Watershed as well. The amount of impact that they have on the watershed has been very beneficial, and we're hopefully seeing some positive impact on our watersheds as well as the surface waters that they're intended to protect. Next slide, Tom. Just want to highlight these two charts here real quick. The top chart is total phosphorus within the Red Cedar River at the Lake Menomin Dam since 1995 through 2022. And as you can see, the trend in phosphorus is on the downward trend. So we're hoping this is consistent throughout the state that phosphorus levels are look to be on a decrease. So there's probably a number of variables that one should consider, but I think the importance of the work within the Farmer-led Watershed Councils is recognized that it is contributing to some of these efforts. The chart on the bottom shows a little bit different. That is the nitrate concentration at the Menomin Dam at Lake Menomin, and that is on the rise. And I think that shows that we need to focus on our efforts continuously in these areas of our watershed, particularly as how we're managing nitrogen. Phosphorus is still an ongoing concern, but nitrogen is also a rising concern. And as we look at our groundwater monitoring, look at surface water monitoring and how those connections are made, what types of practices can we continue to implement to try to improve those trends. I will mention, and I think it was requested that we bring this up at the county board meeting as well, just a quick highlight on the private well water monitoring program. So as of today, we are done sampling. There's been about 1,000 wells that have been collected. It's kind of a bit of a relief to get to this point, but it was a huge undertaking by a number of staff within our division and within the county itself. I think We're about to see results trickling in here soon, and we'll likely see the last results and invoice from the lab in Stevens Point in sometime in October. So we're while it took a while to get the samples collected, it's going to take a while to get them analyzed, and we'll hopefully to have a nice report coming towards the end of the year. But as we get those results in, we'll certainly be interpreting them and looking at ways that we can carry this conversation as to what we do with this data and how we proceed with a voluntary or some other type of water monitoring program we can offer. With that, I'll turn it over to Tom Carlson in the survey division.
Thank you, Chase. So I just plan on introducing myself for those that don't know me, and then mention that there are two other staff members that work in the office. Greg Botzer, he's been with the county since 2013, and Troy Stoll's been here since 1995. So two fairly long-term employees. And I'll go into the list of the major duties that my office handles. We review and approval of regulated land developments, which include certified survey maps, state and county subdivision plats and condo plats. We perform all surveys required by the county or by a court. We assist the highway department with their various projects, mainly involving road right-of-ways. Another duty is we file and index survey records, administer the county land division ordinance. We assist the general public and other county departments and other agencies with land surveying related questions. We provide copies of survey records upon demand, and we also perform remonumentation and maintenance of the U.S. Public Land Survey System corners. So then I'm going to go into that last major duty and focus on that for the rest of my presentation. So I thought I'd just give a quick background information on the Public Land Survey System for those that aren't familiar with it or don't know what it involves. So the original PLSS corner markers, there were roughly 2,800 of them scattered around the county. They were set in Dunn County from 1847 to 1853. 9 different U.S. deputy surveyors and their crews completed this work. The corner markers were typically wood posts cut from local trees. These markers were set at half-mile intervals around the perimeter of each 1 mile square section of land. Over time, a variety of many types of monuments were set to replace the original wood posts, such as iron pipes and rods, glass, stones, bricks, axles, sleigh parts, well points, gun barrels, you name it, whatever they had on hand, they used it. Once the original survey was completed, the perpetuation and maintenance of the system became the responsibility of mainly county surveyors, but private surveyors are also assisting with the work. Just briefly touch on the program mandates and funding sources. So perpetuation of section corners is referenced in state statute, chapter 59.74. However, county surveyors are not mandated to perform perpetuation of the section corners. We do it by choice, and it is a benefit to the public. The work that we perform in Dunn County here totals approximately 1.5 full-time equivalent positions, resulting in an annual cost through the budget of approximately $155,000, and it is fully funded through the county tax levy. There are no user fees or sources of revenue to offset those costs. And I will just stress that the program does provide a substantial cost savings to landowners who are having property surveys completed. So why is it so important that the public land survey system be protected and maintained? It's one of Wisconsin's very first infrastructures. It's still being used today. Most land descriptions across the entire state are referenced to this system. It serves as a framework for property ownership. Also, it serves as a foundation for all the parcel mapping projects that we do. Protecting it and maintaining it reduces the risk of property disputes and equitable taxation and disagreements about resource rights. Avoids confusion over ownership and easement locations, and prevents unnecessary expenditures by private citizens and local governments. So the rest of my presentation, I'm going to conclude with the various monuments that we've recovered as part of our remonumentation work. So the first thing I want to start out with is an important part of remon work involves researching historical records. On the screen, we have a copy of some survey notes here. D.W. Wade, he was a previous county surveyor. These are his notes from 1903. If you look in the yellow, he indicated he placed 4 bricks at 5 different section corners in the town of Spring Brook. And then County Surveyor Thompson, in the date on here, 1910 on the bottom, he was there and he found 4 brick buried about 1 foot below the surface of the ground at all 4 section corners of section 23, town 27 north, range 11 west, which is town of Spring Brook. So our goal was to search for those bricks at the northeast corner of section 23. So here's the northeast corner of section 23. It's located at what is now the intersection of County Trunk Highway E and 970th Street in the town of Spring Brook. We computed an approximate search location and began an excavation. So you can see in the hole there, I hope it's easy to see, but there are some bricks right there that we discovered a few feet below the road surface. Removal of the brick revealed another brick below it on end. So we just kept digging down, and you can see all the bricks, pieces of red brick that we were pulling out, and they just kept going down vertical column into native soil. As you can see, only one of the 4 bricks was found intact. The others were found in various pieces. So once the road was redone and paved over, we returned and set a magnetic survey nail directly above that column of bricks in the new paving. I intend to bring one of those nails along and just show that at the county board. I don't have one with me this morning. So that was a really neat corner, a lot of historical significance. This is a stone that we found laying flat at a fence corner. And what's unique about it is it contains scribing in the top of it. We didn't notice that at first, but we started scraping the moss off, and sure enough, there's some scribing, S14 for section 14. And as we kept working on it, it had the section number 14 and then the town 30, range 12 west, which is town of Otter Creek. So that was a really neat find. And then there's a monument in there to perpetuate the position where the stone was. So the stone was actually moved over and just left next to the monument. So yeah, it was a really neat stone. This is another corner in the town of Otter Creek. We arrived at the corner position with an approximate search area, and we find this iron rod sticking out of the ground. As we dig down, we find this really odd shaped flange on it, something we've never seen before. So further excavation revealed that it was a crankshaft from a 4-cylinder engine. And again, the surveyors didn't have a local steel supplier many years ago. They just used whatever they had on hand. So it made a really nice survey monument. This was the only part that was sticking out of the ground. It had been there all those years. So we were very shocked. I personally have never found a crankshaft until that day. This here is by far the most substantial monument we've ever recovered. What you're looking at is an actual shaft from a locomotive. Don't know how long it is. It's probably at least 8 feet long. Most of it is in the ground. It was tipped and leaning, so we had to dig around it to try and plumb it up. And you can see there's a keyway or a shaft cut in the side. So chances of, you always hear people tampering with survey monuments. I don't think anybody would ever tamper with this or remove it. It's very heavy, probably weighs several hundred pounds. This was a very interesting corner, town of Menominee. In the foreground, you can see there's an iron pipe here. I know it may be hard to see, but there's some flagging tied around it. A surveyor had set this, more modern or recent times, pick this side of the fence corner. If they would have just looked on the backside in 1937, County Surveyor William A. Harding set a cement block and some red brick. It was there. It wasn't above ground, but we used shovels, excavated around the corner, and we found Mr. Harding's cement block and a lot of brick, which you'll see in a second here. So it's kind of unfortunate that we have some surveys that have used an iron pipe and missed some very important historical information. So you can see all the brick we pulled out of there and this very nice shaped cement block that had been in the ground since 1937, just waiting to be discovered. So I went to school so I wouldn't have to use a shovel the rest of my life. And I find that I'm using a shovel most days when I'm out in the field. So you can't find things without a shovel. This is a moss covered stone, was set in 1880 to replace the original. Remember I talked about originally they put in wood posts. So in 1880, that original wood stake was found and they replaced it with this stone, which is a much better monument. certainly survive much longer than a wood post. And it just happens to be at a quarter corner. So they scribed very carefully 1/4S for quarter section, and then they scribed or chiseled an X in the top once we peeled the moss off. So that stone is still, we have two options. We can either leave the stone there or we can replace it with a more modern monument. But in my mind, that stone has been there since 1880. It'll last at least another 100 years. So we just left it in place. It is very, very neat stone. Probably one of the nicer stones I've ever found in my career. So as part of their duties, original government surveyors were also instructed to blaze and scribe trees. They're known as bearing trees as witnesses to the actual corner location. With the purpose that if the corner itself ever got destroyed, damaged, or removed, you could return direction and distance from the tree. There were typically 2 trees were marked, and in some instances, 4 trees in different directions were marked. So as what you're looking at here is Town of Sherman. This is a sugar maple tree that was marked by Jesse T. Jarrett in October of 1849. It's still alive. We don't have many of these in the county, but the corner is actually right here at the base of this orange post. And then they measured the direction and distance and blazed this tree. And you can see how the tree is all scarred here. There would have been a lower blaze and an upper blaze. And over time, that tree tried to heal itself and grow over the scar. So when we measure the distance from this tree and the direction, it puts us right back to this fence corner. So we have no doubt that that is the original tree from 1849. And you think just everything that could have happened over time, lightning and tornadoes, windstorms, logging, people wanting firewood, clearing ground for pasture, the chances that these trees would still be alive today. We don't have many in the county, but this is one that is, I wouldn't say it's healthy, it's alive and it's surviving, but it's not thriving. But it is still alive. It's a very neat tree. So here's a copy of the, field notes from 1849. They were running north between sections 20 and 21 at a distance of 40 chains, which is a half a mile. They set a quarter section post and they marked 2 sugar bearing trees. One was 16 inches in diameter, one was 10. This is the one that we had found. It was located north 31.5 degrees west, 31 links. A link is 0.66 feet. So that was about 20.5 feet roughly, is where that tree was located. And then this is just a kind of to give you a perspective how big that tree is. It's 52 inches in diameter. It's a massive tree. So that was a really neat find. This is another corner. The surveyor had set a plowshare, again, whatever they had on hand. So there's a 1 bottom plow share sitting here with a piece of broken brick. And then they also blazed and scribed a white oak tree. This was in 1922. So this was after the original survey was done, but that tree is still standing too. And that's up on the Dunn Barron County line. Here's another example of using material that they just had on hand. People have heard of sand points, basically an old well point, screens in the side here. They drove that down and that's what the water went through and they pumped it out. So this was set as a survey marker along with a stone. And this was on the town line between Tainter and Otter Creek. So this last, I threw this in here just as a really good example of trusting your gut. So this was in the town of Otter Creek. A local surveyor, maybe in the last 10, 15 years, had discovered this iron pipe. It was in the vicinity of a section corner, ended up using it on his survey map. It looks like a nice old rusted 2-inch iron pipe. Problem is it's in the shoulder of the road. It really doesn't fit well. It should be in the center line of the road. The distances to adjacent section corners just didn't seem to fit very well. And something just told us it wasn't right. So we ended up excavating around that pipe to see what it was, how long it was. And we found out it was never meant to be a survey marker. But rather it was cemented in a milk can and somebody had used it as a mailbox post and it had gotten cut off and local surveyors accepted it as a survey monument when it never was intended to be. So a good example of doing some further investigation when something just doesn't look right. So and that concludes my portion of the report and I'm going to turn it over to Ann.
Well, first I have to say, I went and saw Indiana Jones 5 over the weekend and I had no idea we had an archaeologist in the office. So I'm a little envious. So just to start off, for those who don't know me, I'm Ann Wodarczyk. I am the head of the Planning and Land Use Control Division. My title is Planner / Zoning Administrator. I did notice that I have Tamara Traxler listed on our control staff who's sitting next to me, who actually did not work in this year. So I'll have to make a change there. So our responsibilities in our office, so we provide assistance in development, interpretation, and maintenance of land uses and consistent land use control. We're committed to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of Dunn County citizens, and we're also responsible for the formulation of plans, ordinances, and programs that ensure long-term well-being of our community. I've listed some key duties. There are far more than this, but I wanted to have a nice clean slide. For my presentation, I wanted to focus on zoning since that does take the bulk of our work. So I'm calling this kind of our tools of the trade. We have zoning permits, the comprehensive plan, the zoning map, and the code of ordinances. These are the main tools that we use in the planning and land use division. They enable us to regulate development, align projects with the community's vision, and provide guidance to property owners and developers. And we use these to plan our community. So zoning is, for those who don't know, I believe this committee is pretty familiar, but it is the law that determines how land or property can be used in a municipality. It regulates the activities or uses that can take place, the size of buildings, and promotes orderly patterns of development. I included this chart showing the permits that we process per year. If you look to 2022 on the right, we're pretty neck and neck with our sanitary permits and our general zoning permits. We do process a lot of special permits, including conditional uses and variants as well. In total, we processed 449 permits in 2022. What this chart doesn't show is the site visits and the amount of time spent with each person applying for these permits. But permits are a tool to ensure compliance with our ordinances and guide our development plans and density and land uses in different areas. Our next tool is the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan sets the vision, goals, and policies for growth of the county. This has to be consistent with the vision of growth with the towns as well. And this ensures that areas remain stable or preserved for certain uses like agriculture. We will be hearing a summary too of where we're at with our comprehensive plan later in this meeting. Our next tool is the zoning map. The zoning map gives a zoning designation to each property. Each parcel is designated with a zoning designation. This is just kind of a zoomed in area just to kind of show what that looks like. Our code of ordinances is another important tool. The zoning code contains development standards that limit the uses and size of new buildings that can be built in any zone. Just as examples, setbacks, permitted uses, and height limits. So together this should say 4, I should add that, work in tandem. The comprehensive plan sets the broad vision and goals for future development. The zoning code of ordinances translates the plan into specific regulations and standards. And the zoning maps visually depict the zoning districts to ensure consistent implementation of the regulations. By integrating these elements, local governments such as Dunn County and the towns can promote orderly development, protect community character, and balance the needs of various stakeholders within their jurisdictions. And that concludes my section of the report. Before I hand the mic back, I would just like to say that our decision with the comprehensive zoning amendment that we heard earlier Not having it listed as an action item does not invalidate it moving forward. It's good to have that in there as good practice, but because we had a public hearing and it was properly noticed, you're all good to go. So thank you for that.
And I guess with that, thanks for your support within our department and on behalf of our management team with Environmental Service Department. We'd like to thank you and happy to answer any questions beyond what our presentation was on and other programs within our department.
Mr. Chairman. So in your department, how many like vacancies for everybody are open and how many are trying to be filled? Because some are kind of just put off, in the future, but of the vacancies, how many are actively you're trying to fill?
I can speak for Land and Water Conservation. We are full right now with what we have available. We did, if you remember a couple of years ago, we did have a vacant position that we lost or we forego to maintain another position that grant funding fell through on or was terminated on. So we are good where we're at. I'll let Ann and Tom speak on theirs.
We do have an open position for a zoning specialist. At this time, I believe it is unfunded.
And there are no vacancies in the survey office.
Mike.
Thank you. Anne, that last paragraph on your report where it summarizes that, I really like that. It kind of reminds me of what we're doing again too. I need all the reminders, but that's really good.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah.
As usual, well done. Thank you. It looks nice. It's very informative and thanks to everybody for all your hard work.
Okay, I think we all agree. And we'll be proud of you, as you should be of yourselves. 6B, review of groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations. I guess back to you, Chase.
Okay, thank you. I will just share my screen here quick. And with us today, we have Travis Dreyer. He's a conservation planner and nutrient management specialist within our division. As you recall, within your packet, there is the groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations. We cover this from time to time just to try to give you an update. And at this point, we've spent some time in the last couple of years starting to talk about nutrient management a little bit more and the realities around it. I think it's becoming more of a focus of our conversations with landowners within our division, specifically as it relates to our the ordinance that the county adopted, where it incorporated the ag performance standards into existing ordinance. So with that, I'm going to run the slides, but I'm going to turn it over to Travis and he's going to walk you through some of the nutrient management portions of our division and for the county. So, go ahead,
Thank you,
Travis.
Chase. So I'll be talking about the nutrient management plan, nutrient management in Dunn County this morning. Nutrient management is basically a strategy for obtaining the maximum return for an on or off farm fertilizer resources in a manner that protects the quality of nearby water resources. This slide here just goes over some basics of it. I'll just hit a few of the things. The biggest thing is it requires an assessment of all on-farm nutrient resources from animals and legume crops. That usually entails us going out or a planner going out and interviewing the farm and figuring out what their goals are and basically a comprehensive farm review. So when we're doing these nutrient management plans, someone is supposed to be going out and knowing what's going on in these farms. As part of this, soil tests are taken on all crop acres and pasture land. And the plan will take the soil tests and it will take the UW recommendations for what crops are supposed to be needing each time. So the nutrient management plan provides guidance on where and how to spread manure and fertilizer. This guidance is taken from the soil samples and soil maps, and then also going into what the actual crop needs are. Part of the nutrient management plan has maps for all the fields on the farm. So that is very handy for farmers to be able to look up and know where they're supposed to be spreading or where they're going to be planting. helps us out a lot when we are talking to farmers to know exactly what's going on. The nutrient plan itself will generate multiple reports, and these reports can be used for journal farm planning. They can be used for yield estimates for each year. They can be used for fertilizer costs and various other things. So one thing that's going on right now with the water quality trading, we can spit out water quality trading reports too. So NMP coverage in Dunn County, the current status of NMP coverage is we're kind of staying steady. We've been increasing a little bit. So right now we have about 60,700 acres that are covered with NMP. In the past years and I'll read it for you since it's a little bit small, but 2022, we had 55,900, 2021, 59,200, 2020, 60,500, 2019, 59,400, and 2018, 24,400 acres. So you can see there's been a spread between that 24,000 to about 60,000 acres. Reasons being, depends on how things have been managed in the past. We had of course, everyone blames COVID. COVID helped cause some problems there. Well, I'll skip over to the past 3 years. We've been getting more SNAP Plus files from our farmers. And we've been working a lot with our agronomists that are submitting these plans. And we're trying to dial it in real accurate. And the reason you look at in 2022, we had a drop in about 1,000 acres almost. That drop occurred because we were able to drill down into our data and found out that a lot of the nutrient management plans that were being submitted included acres in other farms or acres in other counties. So one thing we've been really requesting is to get these SNAP Plus files so then we can go and verify when the acres are reported. So these plans will cover can cover multiple counties, can cover multiple farms, depends on what size farm is. Another thing that's acreage changing is CAFO operations tend to have larger changes in acreage. They may take a couple fields here and exchange for some other fields over there, and especially ones that are along the borders of towns. That will make some changes for that too. So overall, from my research, I feel that the nutrient management plan coverage in Dunn County is much higher than what's being reported. The reason being is the stuff that is submitted to Dunn County is stuff that is required by ordinance, volunteer, or through programs that people are working with us. Most farms are following some sort of plan, but the plan may not be up to state standards or might not meet our quality control standards. So most farms, when they're working with an agronomist or working with a fertilizer dealer, are pulling some sort of soil test or using some sort of recommendation to put nutrients on the ground. But again, we don't have all that data just because most of them are voluntarily, or a lot of people voluntarily will submit it, and if we aren't working directly with them. So how is the Land Water Conservation promoting NMP? We partner with CVTC to teach a nutrient management planning class each year. So that usually gets about between 10 to 15 people a year, and they're usually smaller farms. But that is a pretty good program because we are able to teach the farmers and the operators how to write their own plan. In the long run, if they follow through with that, they have a lot of control of what's being put in their plan, and they're able to take more ownership of it and have more knowledge of what's going on. A lot of it's word of mouth. We send mailings out to people throughout the year, depending on how our funding is. We get funds from the yearly funds from the state. We call them our SIG funds. We get about $20,000 a year is what we apply for. Roughly, we could apply for more, could apply for less, but 20,000 seems to be what we can get spent each year. And we promote farmland preservation program and Grant, Wilson, and Lucas townships. That could be expanded if other townships were to adopt the zoning for that. And then we assist landowners with expanding agricultural enterprise areas. So that is part of the zoning that I talked a little bit about, but I could go in more detail, but we'll just leave it at that. And then we also assist the Natural Resource Conservation Service with conservation projects. So considerations of writing NP. Basically, we look at what are the goals of the farmer. Okay, the farmer's got to be able to make some money. Farmer's got to be able to produce crops the highest yield possible, or with the greatest return on investment. Those are two completely different categories, and it depends what their goals are there. It produce crops to support other farm functions. So we have people that produce crops for feed. We have people that produce crops for commercial purposes. And then the other thing too is how sustainable do these farms want to be? Do they want to be willing to take a pay cut and produce maybe less yield, but higher quality? Or do they want to go for as much yield as they possibly can and maybe sacrifice a little bit more soil loss? So there's different things that to take into consideration. So the goal, when we're meeting these farmers, we have to figure out, are their goals consistent with what state regulation is? So biggest thing for us is a couple of big things is, do fields meet T? That's tolerable soil loss. Each soil type has a different soil loss that is allowed to be economically sustainable. That has been passed down to the government here. Do all nutrient applications follow UW recommendations? And then are setbacks being met? So some of the setbacks are, you can't spread within 50 feet of private wells. You can't have tillage within 5 feet from the edge of surface water. So things like a stream bank or the bank of a river or lake. And then manure restrictions. That's a SWCMA, the Soil Water Quality Management Area. There are some certain restrictions within 300 feet of streams and rivers or 1,000 feet from lake or areas susceptible to groundwater contamination. And there's various other things we have to take in consideration also. So what can Dunn County do to promote additional nutrient management coverage? One thing is continue applying for the SIG funding. Again, that's money we get from the state every year. That helps offset the cost for farmers when they're developing these plans. It does cost money to do. The other thing is continue to educate landowners and producers about the value of having a nutrient management plan. That's through meetings, one-on-one consultations, and farm visits. And then continue to assist CVTC with their nutrient management planning classes. Those classes occur in the fall and run for about 2-3 months, depending on how many people are there. So that's a good way to do it too. And the other thing too is notify landowners and producers about state regulations and about our updates to Chapter 10 in the Animal Waste Ordinance. And that's kind of an ongoing project there. We also work with landowners through the Department of Trade and Consumer Protection to create additional agricultural enterprise areas. That falls in with the Farmland Preservation Program. And then and another thing we could do is have the towns adopt agricultural zoning throughout Dunn County. And that would automatically make the townships, people within townships eligible for Farmland Preservation Program. So I just threw these ad hoc committee recommendations. One of the things was to increase the number of cropland acres within Dunn County that are covered by a nutrient management plan by 10% each year. ACAP 50 specifies that the landowner must receive a bona fide offer cost sharing before they would be required to have a nutrient management plan. Currently, cost share rate is set at $40 per acre. To get this money, we are getting some money we get those SIG funds I talked about. We get about $20,000 per year on average from the state is what we're getting here. So to accomplish this 10% goal a year, we would, that is about 500 acres per year. We would have to have about, no, that's fine. So right now we have about 60,000 acres. I did calculations for 50,000, just make it a little easier. So we have roughly 200,000 acres within Dunn County that would need to have a full coverage nutrient management plan. If we were to do this in 10 years, we'd have to do 20,000 acres per year of nutrient management planning. So the required cost share that the state says is $40 an acre. That would put us at $800,000 per year we would have to spend to get the entire county up to our goals within 10 years. So another recommendation was to educate and inform all producers that a nutrient management plan per state statute and our 151.07 is required for all fields receiving nutrients or manure within 12 months. All cropland within Dunn County will need to be recorded and owner operators notified. We have an idea of all the cropland within Dunn County. It's not perfect. Cropland is constantly being taken into production and being put out of production for various reasons. So that's always a moving number. One thing we could work with is Farm Service Agency. They might be able to assist with this, but we'd have to most likely submit a Freedom of Information Act to get the data from them. All farms are supposed to report their farm acres to the Farm Service Agency every year. Again, that would be one source we could do. It's just working with them to get that data. Might be a little bit difficult. The other thing is additional funding for outreach would be required. And there's various forms of outreach. We'd have to decide how we would do that and how much funding we would need for each area we would do. And then overall, additional staff hours would need to be allocated just for the general outreach numbers and to be able to get the materials and so we can talk with operators and owners. This here is just a quick map I threw together of nutrient management planning acres that have been submitted and SNAP Plus. This is the program that everyone's supposed to be writing SNAP Plus in. These acres are from 2018 to 2023. A little harder to see there, but you can kind of see those yellow acres. Those are the confined animal feeding operation acres. They have to submit their data to the DNR every year, and sometimes the DNR is very generous with us and we have a good relationship with them and they can provide some of that shape files for us. So that's just a general shot of what we have. Again, there's more out there. This map doesn't show all the nutrient management plans that we have in Dunn County because farms do not have to submit it in that format. Farms just have to submit a nutrient management plan and that could be in paper. So we do get paper farms and we have not digitized those fields yet. That gives you kind of a general idea there. I try to go as quick as I could, but is there any questions from the committee right off the bat here?
Questions for Travis?
I would just add too that our nutrient management program, I think, is headed in the right direction. I think Travis has done some good work with trying to get a handle on where we sit with nutrient management planning and the realities around its implementation and the challenges with it. I think we're in a constant state of evaluation and how we can maybe do things better. And Travis alluded to maybe some ideas how we might want to consider better outreach and education. But certainly by state law, administrative code since 2000 and effective in 2008 with the nutrient management standard, but NR 151 in general since 2002. As of 2021, in July of 2021, county board rolled those ag performance standards consistent with NR 151 into county code. And we are actively administering and implementing those rules here in the county. So it's going to be a long slog, and it has been already. Certainly after 20 plus years, we would hope that we were further ahead, but the realities around adoption of nutrient management planning, and then even just the challenges of tracking it are things to consider as we look at specifically the groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations and just trying to revisit the realities around that. But certainly we're headed in the right direction, and someday we'll get to 100%.
Yeah, thank you. Either Travis or you, if someone accepts cost share to do a nutrient management plan, how long do they have to continue doing that plan?
If someone accepts cost sharing for the nutrient management plan, we have it specifically in the contracts, it's in perpetuity. So basically on that part, we go by parcel. That parcel is supposed to have a nutrient management plan from here on out.
As long as the land is farmed.
Yeah.
Right. If for some reason it was not farmed anymore, no need for the nutrient management plan, then it would be. But yes, part of the idea is we're using tax dollars to provide cost share incentives for a lot of our programs. And I think the original hope and intent would be that we won't have to continue to use tax dollars to cost share things once they're in compliance. So that's where the perpetuity, or as long as the land is farmed, it must practice nutrient management planning. So cost share wouldn't need to be required again.
When you say practice nutrient management sharing, you mean sharing that with Dunn County too, right? To submit the plans and do the whole thing?
Technically, yes, it's part of our ordinance. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Just a quick, so this chart shows the SNAP Plus acreage is currently reported.
Yes.
And
Well,
is,
it shows the stuff that has been submitted in digital format in Snap Plus. We
okay,
do have some Snap Plus acres, a fair amount of them that are submitted in PDF or paper format.
and if you know, farmers aren't required to submit that to you, are they?
Farmers are required to submit a nutrient management plan to us.
Right.
They can decide what form they
Okay.
have to have, they submit it to.
So the ones who use SNAP Plus to use this from it. Okay.
Well, all of them are supposed to do it in Snap Plus. It's just that some people do not like to give us that data because they feel it's proprietary reasons, or they feel that maybe their
Okay.
neighbor could get a hold of the data.
Yep. Sure. Okay.
And I would just add that the requirements are to meet specifically within the county ordinances to meet the 590 conservation practice standard, code 590. And that requires following UW recommendations and following a lot of things, where Travis just references SNAP Plus as the program. That is, if you can meet your requirements within that program, you're meeting the 590 standard. Certainly you can do a nutrient management plan on the back of a napkin and all that, but the evaluation to whether it actually meets the 590 standard is a little more gruesome and arduous task. But I think in general, we would like to see more electronic submittals of nutrient management plans, just from a tracking purpose and administration of the program. But by law, they're not necessarily required. But we would, I think part of the goals of our program is to try to get a better handle on the tracking and digital format of this, so we can provide informed decision making rather than us trying to constantly look and see where these plans are being, where the coverage is. So.
Any other questions? Okay.
Any other questions on the groundwater ad hoc stuff? I'd be happy to answer them as well. Otherwise, that's our
Yeah.
report for this time.
Thanks, Chase. Thanks, Travis. Appreciate it. Okay, then we'll move on to comprehensive plan update. And Tara.
So we do have Tammy here today. She put together an update of where we're at with the comprehensive plan, and I'll turn it over to her.
Good morning, committee. All right, so this was a fun project to kind of go back in time to put a history to what was been done and where we're at. And it's evolving document, so I'd appreciate other input if I missed elements as I go through this presentation. So our comprehensive plan, really, started in 2008. The document got adopted and was in effect starting in 2010. And as comprehensive plans go, they're that 20-year document. It's a living document that gives us direction to where we want to take land use policies, where we want to take the county, and, along with the partnership with our towns and our communities within our jurisdiction. So our plan, was adopted late of 2009. And through comprehensive planning law, we have to adopt it by ordinance. So if you go on the county website, our comprehensive plan is actually an ordinance and exists as a living document that way. Our farmland preservation plan was actually added to our comprehensive plan in 2016. That process of adding it, we'll discuss later, but that was actually done through a resolution. So just to keep that in mind, but it's that 2016, we did see some changes to our comp plan. And then in 2020, we started a contract with Cedar Corps to start an amendment process to the plan. And basically, when the plan got adopted, there's an implementation element that says, what are we going to do with this document? How do we check in with it? How do we interact with it? And at least by state statute, it says we should probably do it at least every 10 years. So just to keep those kind of items in mind. So the implementation element, our plan states that it should be reviewed every 5 years. And, along with if there's any significant changes in land use, we also, as county staff, the committee, talk about the statistics, what's going on, what are those major changes, those economic shifts that we think we need to be revisiting this document. And then decide when are these amendments needed. And, in big picture things, it is those development trends, those farmland conversion rates. What are we seeing? And so farmland preservation was a big element that we called out in our plan originally that said, hey, this is something we want to continually check in with. So I think the farmland preservation element is important to think about that time frame of us updating our that document at that time. Again, available resources for future projects. We don't realize that comprehensive plans are a great tool for future grant writing. So if we can look into the future and say, okay, we know that there's a large project coming on, and if we identify it now in our comprehensive plan, we open ourselves up to new opportunities for funding, right? Grant opportunities, as long as it's in our comprehensive plan as a priority, now we have new funding sources. So we can't always foresee what's going on in the future, but it's great if we can incorporate creative elements in that document to open us to funding opportunities. And then most importantly is what are our stakeholders wanting, needing from us, and making sure we reflect that in this document. So right from our current plan, it spells out that 2014 was our first check-in point. And, really kind of look at that, time frame from 2010 to 2015 of what we've done. So I put down here at the bottom is just kind of an action item for this committee. If we want to go there, is review those implementation activities. What was in the original plan, and how relevant are they? Are they still current? What do we need to address? So yeah, I guess I jumped ahead. My next slide, again, is a review of those accomplishments from 2010, review the goals, policies, objectives, everything that was the content of those different sections. So example, like the housing element, we know there was a housing study done. How relevant is that today? And then also, what are those implementation items, and do we need to be updating them? The second part of our implementation section is really reviewing that public participation plan. This was discussed before. I believe the consultant brought that up. And do we want to talk about that process, right? So we know we need to, wherever we're at today, we need to get out to the public. Is it held at just the committee level? I would envision us having a stakeholder element, some public meetings within the community, and re-looking at that plan. What does that input look like from our community and our other stakeholders? And then part of that process, if we want to change our public participation, we would want to do that with a new resolution. So that's our current plan, the implementation section. The next part of this, I wanted to really touch base on that farmland preservation plan. So in 2016, those changes were made to our comp plan, but they were only done by resolution. So in order for our comprehensive plan to acknowledge any updates, it would have to be done by ordinance. So the farmland preservation element was relevant, and it met the requirements for the farmers to get those credits, but it does not meet the requirements for us statute wise to call it an update to our comp plan, if that makes sense. And then, related to that, we did, so there's a lot of work done, and there's a lot of moving parts here, but the comprehensive zoning ordinance was updated and reflected the new zoning district. So, kind of keep those, dates in mind. And then the following is really, how long is our farmland preservation certification good for? 2026 is that deadline and we need to get recertified. That's not too far out. So I really thought it would be important as we go through this process to make sure we're keeping that 2026 deadline also in mind. So big question for the committee, it would be, do we feel like the farmland preservation changes are enough to satisfy this 5 to 10 year requirement for updating our comprehensive plan? And if we want to, we could move forward with approving basically that resolution and just change it to an ordinance and acknowledge those changes. Or we just identify farmland preservation as a part of our comprehensive plan update as we go forward with a major rewrite of the document. And then the third item to talk about would be is where we are at with our contract with Cedar Core. Identify, just kind of outline some key items and deliverables that we are looking forward to as staff to review with the consultant. The big thing is really looking at these land use trends. What has happened? When the document, the contract was first started, we had industrial sand. We know this groundwater surface water quality group is going. We have CAFOs. Later, the group identified wetlands and broadband as key elements to addressing those trends. So it really goes to show this document, a lot of things is changing and making sure we're really touching those different land use changes and what's affecting our stakeholders, our community, our taxpayers, and how can we be more proactive with these items. So the big thing here is we're as staff waiting to get these deliverables from Cedar Core. We're hoping by the end of July actually, or into August, but you know, a staff review, we're hoping again, where we're at by the end of August to get these items reviewed and whether the committee wants to see them or what we want to do with them next. So I just put some action steps here for the committee to consider. The timeline required by statute. Do we want to consider the farmland preservation plan as part of that 10-year update, right? So if we're looking at, you know, the original amendments that we were looking at from our consultant was supposed to meet that 10-year requirement. Well, we're far beyond that at this point. We could take action on them, or we can again just prioritize farmland preservation as we do our major rewrite going forward. The second step here would be utilizing those deliverables from Cedar Core. What does that look like from us as staff? So I guess we're envisioning that those deliverables. So we're really hoping these land use trends, the current land use maps, or the tools that we're going to will be utilized as we go out to our towns and talk about where does development look like in the future? You know, taking that housing study and putting that in the context of what does this landscape look like the next 20 years? And, you know, can we just utilize those deliverables from Cedar Core and include them as an appendix to our current plan or in a major rewrite going forward? And so then the final element that I wanted to talk about is that implementation section. Reviewing and identifying our priority areas. So the plan, they had these elements identified. We come back and discuss them. We revisit that public participation plan. We develop some outreach activities and then basically kick off a major rewrite of the comp plan. So what does that mean? I already kind of jumped ahead to a schedule of committees. And, you know, here we are today with the comprehensive plan update. Again, this is just an idea, a concept. You know, we can definitely evolve and change as the committee, you know, sees fit. But do we look at those implementation items at the next meeting and discuss what does that mean? You know, what has been accomplished? There's been a lot of work done. And so let's, you know, talk about it at the committee level and decide where are those gaps. And then hopefully by the end of August, we can really review those deliverables from Cedar Core. in September, we can outline some maybe new goals for our comprehensive plan, put a new vision together of what that process would look like. And then develop a public participation plan. We could draft that and then look into October to actually have a public hearing on that and move that through county board. And then hopefully by the end of October, kick off a new rewrite of our comprehensive plan.
Any thoughts? Very helpful. I think you nailed it.
There's a
No.
lot of information here, and so
Yeah.
I think that was just,
But this is
our
a
goal
good,
was to
this is a good
present.
plan for how to take a bite at a time.
Yeah,
So without objection from the committee, Jerry, you guys.
There's a, question on the future land uses, which had just kind of come up lately, are these solar farms. Is that being addressed in the new one or talked about at least?
that's a great question. We have not identified that as a deliverable from Cedar Core, but that is definitely an item that we would want to address as we do the rewrite.
Because I can think of right now of 3 active ones going in, so
Mhm.
it is a trend of future land uses.
Yep, correct. I agree.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Related to the housing study, were there recommendations from the housing study for changes to be made to the comprehensive plan?
No, not specifically, but there are, there are lots of recommendations that will have an impact on setting goals and doing a comprehensive rewrite of the comp plan.
Okay.
Just to comment on that too, I think that a lot of the things coming out of this housing study, I think we're gonna have to put into our new comprehensive plan because a lot of this work from Cedar Core as far as deliverables would not have covered any of that. So at this point, I mean, I think we're kind of suggesting that we try to wrap up these updates that Cedar Core provided, and then we kind of look forward into our new comprehensive plan and getting that going as soon as we can. If the committee also feels that way, of course.
Mr. Chairman. So if I understand this correctly, the idea is to wrap up where we are in amending the plan and the work of Cedar Corp, and then to seriously move forward with a much more comprehensive vision that this committee would have hopefully a major role in. Okay, that's good. I like that.
And question, please? I don't quite understand the difference between that farmland preservation ordinance or just by resolution. Is that because by by resolution, it doesn't require an update? Or I don't quite, what's the big difference between the resolution and the ordinance? Does the ordinance mean that because that's enough difference that it's gotta be a total rewrite or what? I don't quite follow that chain of thought.
You know, what I gather from an ordinance is it just is more of a public process, right? So once things get enacted by ordinance, there was more input and, another public hearing, more involvement notification to the towns than a resolution would have been. That said, it appears that the farmland preservation plan, that element went through all those necessary steps. It just might have been an oversight that might move forward as a resolution versus an ordinance. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll proceed this way. Thank you very much. Let's see. I think the next item is a presentation from Neil Koch. So would it be okay with people if we took a 5-minute break before we did that? So in 5 minutes? Yeah. Patience. Mr. Cook, if you want to either sit or stand, it's up to you. Floor is yours.
I'm Neil Cook, N 7238 520th Street, town of Menominee. Will Menominee city wells become contaminated? Septic systems around Menominee should be banned so city wells won't become contaminated. Many studies around the country have found that septic drain field water can contaminate an aquifer. A study of wells near septic systems in Wisconsin found hepatitis, Norwalk-like viruses, rotavirus, and enterovirus. A Chippewa County groundwater study by University of Stevens Point in 2016 found well water contaminated from septic drain field water. A study by John Tinker in 1991 of 3 subdivisions in Eau Claire County and 2 subdivisions in LaCrosse County found nitrate exceeding 10 milligrams per liter. Aquifer water from septic drain fields have contained viruses, nitrate, and household chemicals. Nitrate can cause colorectal cancer and thyroid dysfunction. And I don't know if you saw the evening news the other day, they said a lot of young people are dying from colorectal cancer. And I wonder if there's a nitrate connection to that. The city is surrounded by housing developments that have wells and septic systems. Septic systems are the #1 polluter of groundwater in the United States. 60% of the aquifer recharge in housing developments come from septic drain field water. I want to really emphasize that 60% of the aquifer recharge comes from household developments from septic drain field water. Today, Menominee has excellent drinking water, but how long will it last? The only current treatment is removing iron, chlorinating, and adding fluoride. The sandstone aquifer is under water table conditions, which means the aquifer is recharged from rain and snowmelt. The city gets its water from 500-foot deep wells in a sandstone aquifer. Septic drain field water can percolate down to the aquifer at the rate of 20 inches per hour in high recharge areas around Menominee. Now that we know that groundwater is contaminated in housing developments, will contaminated groundwater reach Menominee's deep wells? For years, the thinking was that there were 2 aquifers in the sandstone formation separated by confining shale layers. The confining layers are not continuous, and all the deep irrigation wells are open holes so that the water from the shallow aquifers can mix with the water from the deep aquifers. The sandstone has vertical fractures up to 2 inches wide, and there may be fractures in the confining shale layers. Therefore, septic drain field water and can percolate down and reach the deeper parts of the aquifer. Madison has deep wells in the same sandstone formation that we have here in Menominee. And it was also thought the confining layers separated the deep part of the aquifer from the shallow part of the aquifer. How do viruses, which had not survived more than 2 years in groundwater, reach 700-foot deep wells in Madison? A study which scientists said was a waste of time found human pathogenic viruses in a deep Madison well. Some Madison wells are now being contaminated by PFAS, a forever chemical. Groundwater in deep aquifers is usually very old, sometimes thousands of years old. However, even in the deep part of some aquifers, traces of tritium were found from nuclear bomb tests in the 1950s. With all the housing developments with septic systems surrounding Menominee, is like the city being surrounded by a large confined animal feeding operations. It may be just a matter of time before the contaminants from septic drain fields reach the city wells. To prevent this from happening, the city, townships, and county need to work together to replace all septic systems and house developments with a sanitary sewer system, sorry. People say it is too expensive, but looked at the cost of the city will have to endure to maintain safe drinking water. Algoma Township, west of Oshkosh, established a sanitary sewer district and removed all the septic systems in housing developments so it can be done. Some Chippewa Falls city wells became contaminated with nitrate. So in 1998, a nitrate removal system was installed. And I understand today they're updating that at, again, millions of dollars. Eau Claire is looking at removing PFAS from some city wells. And I understand some of their city wells now have been shut down. Will Menominee be spending millions to keep drinking water safe? Nitrate concentrations on the average are above 10 milligrams per liter from septic drain field water. Once nitrate reaches the aquifer, it can persist for years or decades and can move considerable distances downgrade from the source. Each city well creates its own down gradient when the well is being pumped. A current major health problem exists in housing developments where houses are close together and each well has a house and a septic system. People are drinking their neighbor's septic drain field water, resulting in sickness and possible cancer. The Maryland governor in 2011 said pollution from septic systems should be stopped by banning future installation of septic systems in new housing developments. To make our community a better place to live, it is urgent that the county, townships, and city governments work together to establish a sanitary sewer system to replace the septic systems before it is too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Any thoughts or questions from the committee? You're planning on doing a similar presentation to the city?
I did a presentation to the city last week. It was a city and the townships. And the mayor was quite concerned and expressed concern to work with the townships and the county to make sure their wells won't become contaminated.
Okay. Our staff have any, wait a second now. Any staff have any thoughts or comments? Yeah.
Thank you for coming, by the way. Really appreciate your information. I just had a question, just so I can kind of look into this a little bit more on my own. What was the name of the town that replaced the private septic systems with the sewer district in Wisconsin?
Town of Algoma. It's on the west side of Oshkosh. And they got federal and state monies. And I think my brother lives there. That's why I'm familiar with the situation. And he had to pay a fee to the township over a number of years to pay for part of this new sanitary sewer district.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tammy.
I have a question too. When you presented this information to the city of Menominee, did they reflect on their wellhead protection plan for the city? Have they, so typically a municipality will have a plan that shows like their capture zones or their zone of influence to determine how many years before, would it take for a land use to impact their well? Does the city of Menominee have something adopted for wellhead protection?
No, what was the question? I couldn't quite hear you.
Does the city of Menominee have a wellhead protection plan?
They're not required to have a well protection plan under existing wells, but any new well will require a wellhead protection plan.
Okay.
And the town of Menominee, I think in the town of South, passed an ordinance to protect the groundwater, to keep it good recharge and also to keep it from being contaminated. And they use the same criteria in the wellhead protection that they had in this new ordinance.
Okay. And has alternate, so there's nitrate removal technology that's available for private sanitary systems. Has that been considered or discussed with like the townships as far as supporting additional technology?
Well, it's up to the township to make these regulations. You know, individuals can probably put in some type of a treatment center system. But keep in mind that the drain field of water is contaminating the aquifer. And it'll keep contaminating the aquifer even though your household is maybe putting in some kind of a treatment system. So if we want to see our aquifer destroyed, the housing developments are doing a very good job.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah. Mhm.
Neil, just for clarification, when you were asked if you presented to the city, do you mean when you presented to the city town committee, or did you present to the city council? Or
I asked to present it to the city council, and he thought it would be best to start with the joint meeting of the city and the townships, which was, I think, held last week.
yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Anything else? This does seem like something that is relevant to our comprehensive plan discussion as we go forward to, especially the intergovernmental responsibilities. So we will be talking about it. So thanks a lot, Neil. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
We will follow up. Anything else anyone else has? Yeah, Mike.
Could I come in under announcements?
Sure.
Okay, I've been thinking about this for a while, and today is the perfect time with all the reports that we got today. And maybe it's an old guy talking to younger people or something, but we have a really good staff. And we saw that today, and we've seen it all along. And then we look at all the things they're doing, and all I can say is, I don't want to lose you. So keep your balance right, your life work balance right. This is not technically my job here as a supervisor, but I don't want to lose any of you. And we've already poached a few people from other areas. Remember, we're asking you to do a lot of stuff here. And sometimes we don't always understand quite what the time frame is. So keep telling us like you did today. Travis, you talked about the nutrient management plans and all along, but you're doing a great job. Keep it balanced. Don't let us push you too hard, and stay for a long time.
Union negotiations just went out the window on that. Which we don't have anyway. So, okay, I'm sure we all share that. You know that, I think. All right, then any more announcements? Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.